Today we have a very brilliant young Indian student who is right now in Singapore. So we are going to talk to her and we are going to understand her experiences, her journey from India, her life in Singapore, and what she has to share, especially in a pandemic year. So, welcome, Vanessa. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. How about you?
Thank you. Same here. So, Vanessa, I would not want to introduce you. Rather, you should go ahead and please introduce yourself because I know everything about you. So, why don't you go ahead and talk about yourself to the audience? There would be a lots of people, not just your age, who would be looking for a bachelor's abroad, but there would be students who would have similar kind of questions and aspirations as you had probably a few months ago. So, why don't you go ahead and share some information about yourself?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Vanessa. I am 19 years old and I'm currently here in Singapore. And I'm pursuing my bachelor's in business administration from ESSEC Business School in the Singapore campus. And currently, I just finished my first year. So, for the summer, for 4 months till August, I am interning with Whire, which is a recruitment startup here in Singapore. So, currently, I am working, and in September, I will be going back to my second year of BBA. And probably after the second year of BBA in Singapore, I will be going to the France campus.
All right.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa. So we want to know first of all, where were you in India before you flew to Singapore, and what were you actually doing? Like, what was your school? Where were you studying? Which city you come from? So some information about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I was in Delhi, born and brought up, and I was in the famous Delhi public school, Arkepuram, and I did all years of my schooling there. So from all the way from kindergarten till 12th, I was there. And as for subjects, I was well in CBSE, of course, and I had commerce with psychology. So whoever thinks they cannot go abroad without math, I'm here to prove them wrong. And so this was my background, and I finished my 12th. Like my boards, two of them were cancelled because of the pandemic,
Right.
but still I managed to finish it. So yes.
Okay, so that's interesting because right after your class 12th, you flew abroad for your bachelor's, right? Many students in India prefer doing undergrad in India, and then if they want to go for masters, they usually go abroad. But you're an exception because not many Indian students go abroad for bachelor's. I mean, in fact, we look at the figures given by the various embassies, probably less than 20% of outgoing students are for bachelor's. So, how did you actually plan, right, that you have to go for go for an undergrad abroad, and that too in an Asian country?
So the plan to go abroad for me started like it didn't start from an external source. It was always me myself who thought that I want to go because like one of my main motives was that I can always study in an Indian university and then eventually go abroad. But my mindset was that if I study abroad, I can always go back to India. But
Absolutely.
studying in India and going outside versus studying outside and going back to India, the latter is easier.
Right.
So, and to choose an Asian country, so initially I will be very honest, Singapore was the last place I expected I would be, but then like I really sat down and there are many aspects to consider. So I had my options. There was the Western countries. That you had Europe, UK, USA, but then you also have Asia. And if you really look at the market scene, especially with COVID, you see that the Asian countries are on the rise.
Right.
So my program is made in such a way that I actually get best of both worlds. I get Europe and Asia both. So that's why I chose ESSEC and. Studying in Asia, one may feel that, oh, if you're going out, you must really go out west or it's not worth going. But actually, in countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, I think they're perfect for students.
Right. I agree with you because when people in India hear about ESSEC Business School, they always think about France because ESSEC is a French business school. They do have campuses, across the globe, but it's typically a French business school. So why did you choose the Singapore campus and not the French campus?
So, like I said before, it kind of gives me a best of both worlds. So, I wanted to experience it all because if you spend all 4 countries in all 4 years in a single country, it gets a little like you kind of settle in and then you get used to the country and you don't want to. There is no exciting thing you look forward to. In
Right.
my program, for the first 2 years of my 4 year degree, I am here in Singapore. Then I have to go to France and one more exchange. It is compulsory to do.
Okay.
So it kind of gives me a very, so of course it gives me something to look forward to, but in the end, after I graduate and I go out to get a real job,
Yeah.
the employers would be like, they would be very interested that I was flexible enough to go and live in 3 different countries and study there. And if you're studying in 3 different countries, you do end up settling for at least a few months there.
Right.
So you get that exposure. And the way I am planning, it's not just 3 different countries, it's 3 different continents. So it's quite widespread.
Agreed. I would like to take you back to the time when you were in school, class 11th or 12th, back in Delhi. Reason being because most of Indian students, when they want to do something after school, they do it collectively because some of their friends are going for engineering, so they would also go for engineering. If my friend is going to study abroad, I'll probably also apply to study abroad. So what happened with your school, your friend circle? Were they also applying abroad, or were they applying to Indian universities and you took a decision out of the blue that you wanted to study abroad? So how did it actually happen in your school?
So, very interesting thing. I think my school's pretty famous for this. A lot of us went abroad. So, going abroad was this like the second option for almost everyone, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
For some of us it was the first, but it was an option for everyone.
Right.
But so we had started our applications in a period where COVID was not there,
Yeah.
so our expectations were completely different. And
Right.
then suddenly when it was time to receive our offers, COVID started worldwide.
Right.
So that kind of was a very unpredicted change that happened to us. So I would say that a lot of the people who I expected to go abroad and to just some different other countries did not end up actually going because of COVID.
Right.
So it did affect the a number of people going abroad, but I think not as much as one would think.
Right.
So I think for bachelors, all of us were. If we were all going abroad for masters, I understand we delayed the decision. But for bachelors, we kind of don't have any time to lose.
Right.
So we, even if we started online, we all of us started online, and we did end up going abroad eventually. Like for me, it started in September, but I came here in February. So it's okay if I spent a few months away from campus, but there was no time to lose when it comes to your bachelor's.
Right.
And if you see the common trends, Singapore is a hot destination, but ESSEC is not very well known. And in fact, I think I am actually the only one in my batch of 1,000 students
Yeah.
to come to ESSEC. So if you talk about, well, the peer pressure of and the herd mentality of should I go there, should I not? So sometimes you feel it that, oh, everyone's applying to the UK or everyone's applying to the US, am I the only one? But then again, you also have to be a little selfish and think about what you want.
True.
So not go doing what everyone else is doing is may not be the best for you. So you really have to think about yourself.
I completely agree with you. But good answer. So you mentioned COVID, right? And my next question is related to that because we are living in mid of a pandemic, and you went in 2020. Right now we're in 2021. Your bachelor's, I believe, is a 3 to 4 year program. I hope, and we all hope, that probably by 23 or 24, pandemic would be a history. But I still want to know from you, why did you actually choose to move abroad in the middle of a pandemic? Number one. Number two, how tough it was for you mentally, because I know it affects everyone. And number three, were your parents supportive of the fact that you want to study abroad at this young age, especially in the middle of a pandemic?
So, all good questions. Well, first of all, I would like to start by saying that where you are moving to is also a big, like a big factor that comes into this. So, I am moving to Singapore, which was recently in a study. It was apparently called the best place to be in during COVID.
Okay.
And I agree because when I landed here, there were 0 cases. So hearing that makes us very surprised and makes our eyebrows go up. Like, how is that possible? Currently, we're still getting a few cases, recent spikes due to some immigrations, etc. But other than that, like, even if we have cases, I trust this country enough to handle it.
Okay.
Because they have done it in the past, not just with COVID, but with other outbreaks as well.
Right.
So the fact that I was flying to Singapore was actually, it was kind of like a rescue thing. Like, I want to go so that I would also be safer in this country, which is true. Like, even now, if you head out, it is completely normal, I would like to say.
Right.
So that. And why did I decide to? So that was one of the major decisions why I decided to go with,
Right.
like, during COVID.
Right.
Then coming to how difficult it was very difficult. So Singapore, it's a very tight country, very tight laws. They don't. It's not very easy to just kind of slip in. So the process, if you ask me, to come into Singapore as a student, so you need a student visa, of course. But in COVID times, they also implemented a thing called an entry approval. So to enter into Singapore, you have to get an approval.
Right.
So this approval can only come if you have the visa. So I already got my visa.
Okay.
And to get this approval, I had to try multiple times.
Okay.
So the initial plan for me was to fly out in December.
Okay.
But because I kept getting rejected for this approval, because it's a quota system,
Okay.
so I ended up flying 1 month late in
Right.
February. So, and it was not just me, many of my classmates arrived in in March even. So it was not an easy process at all. A lot of paperwork, a lot of flight changes, a lot of money spent, and a lot of energy spent on this as well.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy process, especially now with the situation worsening, I would say, especially in India. They have completely shut off the borders.
I understand.
So people to stay where they are. And about parental support, so again, brings me back to the question. I was moving to Singapore, so considering its safety and considering how like tight the measures are and how good it is to control COVID, my parents are supportive of me to move here. But the fact was that, again, like, just to emphasize, I just got out of school, and I moved here alone. So no one came to drop me in this country. I came alone with my bags. So for Indian parents especially, it's a big deal, right? Like,
Right.
you can't just let your child go.
Right.
For the first time you're moving and you're moving alone. So, but then again, just because Singapore and its reputation, that was the only thing that ensured my parents to let me go. Had it been some other country like the US or the UK, I would probably still be in India. But yes, so it was not easy. Doing it alone is very tough, and you feel lost sometimes, but then you figure it out and you grow as a person. So
Right. Well, first of all, it's a brave decision, and just to, if I can say so, it's a wise decision as well to be in a safer country at the moment. But we still hope and pray that COVID will be a history, it will be history very soon. So I hope your parents are doing good in India, and I hope and I wish health and safety to you as well. Now let's go back to campus life. Now this is the first time you have moved out of India to study, right? I'm sure you'd have traveled the world, and I believe you have already done that. But this is the first time you have moved out of the country for higher education. So, how is the campus life? Has it been affected by the pandemic in Singapore as well? Are you able to go to the classes? If not, how do you define the international class experience? Because I believe you would have friends from all across the globe. So, how do you define your international exposure and experience at ESSEC Business School in Singapore?
So, when it comes to diversity, yes, of course, there's people from all over in our class. There's people from Europe, there's people from Africa, there's people from, well, India, China, other Southeast Asian countries. So it's a good mix.
Right.
And the diversity is there, of course. And when it comes to campus life, so yes, ESSEC in our second semester, which was from January to May, we were following a dual teaching format. So, which was all of us in a class were divided into two groups. So one group attends from campus, the other attends online, and that the groups alternate. Right. So, for example, for 1 week, all classes I would attend online, and then the next week I would attend all of them on campus. So we were all getting a fair mix of online and on campus. Then we had our exams offline actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite an experience
Mm-hmm.
after so many years, after so many months of not doing anything.
Right.
And when it comes to social life on campus, it gets hindered a bit considering the regulations, etc. And some of the people who are your friends in the other group, you cannot meet them, and it gets a bit messy. But I remind myself that I'm thankful that I can at least come to campus.
Absolutely.
So it is a good mix, but I would, of course, I miss fully 100% offline classes, but I really, really hope that next semester in September we can go back to that.
No, absolutely. That's very much possible because even in the Western countries, in European countries, the campuses are opening for on-campus classes this September. So I believe for Singapore, that's certainly going to happen. All right, let's talk about some interesting stuff as well because we do have audience who would have typical questions like how to find accommodation there, like is Indian food available there. So let's move to that part, and there would be tons of questions, so we would try to make it like a rapid fire round. You can take your time, one or two lines, and that should be okay for every question. So starting with accommodation, is it easy to find accommodation as a student there?
Depends on what kind of accommodation you would like, I would
Right.
say. So, ESSEC in Asia Pacific, they do not have their own specific dorms.
Okay.
Other universities like NUS, NTU, they do.
Okay.
So, if you go there, it's a bit easier when it's from the university.
Yeah.
However, for us, we had to find our own. So it really depends if you want to rent an apartment with your friends or you want to rent a student hostel. So it's very easy to find them, but it really again comes down to what you want and your own budget, of course.
Okay. And what do you think would be the average expense of an Indian student, international student, including cost of living and the other expenses like groceries and everything?
Well, that's a good question. Don't be alarmed if you hear a higher figure, but I think if you include rent and food and traveling expense, everything, I would say at least 1,200 to 1,500 Singapore dollars
Right.
is the minimum, I
Right.
would say.
And that would be equivalent to what in Indian currency?
Around upwards from 50,000.
Okay, all right. So
So
it's very comparable to the cost of living in some of the Western European countries, I would say. Right. Anyway,
yes.
thanks for that. Where is ESSEC Singapore campus? Is it in downtown or is it far from the city?
So actually, it's a very interesting location where we're at. So I live in downtown. So it is 30 minutes from my place
Yeah.
here in Singapore. And the place where ESSEC is located is called One North. So this is basically like the startup hub, the startup hub. It's like the Silicon Valley of Singapore. That's what they call it here. So you are surrounded by startups and upcoming companies. And for those of the people who know INSEAD, ESSEC, and NUS, they're all in the same place.
Okay. All
So
right.
you get to, if possible, you get to interact with those students as well. And it's in a good location. There, it's a very futuristic place, I would say. We're surrounded by buildings, and even the campus is a very professional one, not a
Okay.
regular flat building, I would say. So it's a good location where ESSEC is at, and there's many opportunities there if you go looking.
Perfect. How about Indian food? Is it easily available over there? Because I hear, Singapore is a mix of the Chinese community and the Tamilian community, so lots of South Indian restaurants over there. But I want to know from you, how about food? How should anyone go about it if there is a student who is going to Singapore for the first time or considering to study in Singapore? What do you have to say to them?
Well, I would say do not worry about food at all. You get every Indian grocery, you get all Indian food. There's little India. What more do you need?
Right.
So there is no worries about that.
Right.
It really, like, if you want to cook, you can cook, but there's also a lot of cheap food available everywhere. So it really depends. I would say the people who are vegetarian, they might find it a little difficult. They might have to stick to mostly Indian.
Right.
So a little exploration is for them is a little tough.
Right.
But I don't think there's any need to worry about food in Singapore.
Okay, thank you for answering all these interesting questions. Now, some very important questions after the interesting part for any Indian student, and we would probably keep it very short. So, two or three questions, and then we are done. So, we won't bore you much. So, the first question is many students, when they go to Europe, the first thing that they should be aware of is probably the language because they have to learn a European language to find jobs there or to integrate within the German, French, Italian societies. How about Singapore? I believe it's an English speaking country, but still, do they have any preferences for certain languages, and how easy or tough it is for you, because you just grabbed an internship, rather four internships. So how easy or tough it is for you?
So it's not difficult at all. Actually, everyone speaks English, and it's not a problem. Of course, if you speak Mandarin, that's a plus. But is it necessary? Like in Europe, not really. They speak English. It may take a little while to get used to the Singlish and the Singaporean accent, but they all speak English, so that's not a problem. If you don't speak if you speak Tamil, maybe you can speak to a bit more of the people, but there's no, like in Europe, the way the French are, the way the Germans are, you don't really need the language as much. It's just English is fine.
All right. So your tip for Indian students is either learn Mandarin or come from Tamil Nadu, or go to Tamil Nadu and learn Tamil, because that is going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you know it, it's a plus. It's not mandatory though. It's just a plus.
All right, perfect. One final question before we wrap up, Vanessa. The thing is, many Indian students. I mean, this is probably too early a question for you because you are still in your first year. But still, many Indian students, when they go abroad, the first thing that comes to their mind is jobs. Would I be able to get jobs abroad? Right? You just grabbed an internship. So, what is yours? I would say experience of finding a job, how easy or tough it is. Although you're in your first year BBA, it would still be very early for you to make a comment on that, but since you're there, I believe you're a better assessor of the situation than any of us here in India. So how do you look at the situation? What do you have to suggest to students who would be thinking about jobs before the degree itself?
So that's a good question. So for me, I knew that in the summer I would be interning somewhere. So I had started looking, I would say that I started looking a little late. If you're going to intern for the summer, I think you should start looking in December if you really want the good months. But I started looking in, March. And one thing that I noticed a lot, since, like you said, I'm just in the first year, many companies were very hesitant. They were like, you are just a first year, we cannot hire you, even if you have certain qualifications, but it's not like they can't do it.
Right.
And I mean, I accepted that. So initially, when I was looking for these internships, it was a little tough for me because I felt a little lost, like, who is going to take me? I'm just a first year student. But then you must also realize that the startup scene in Singapore is very, I would say, lively at the moment. And there are launch pads filled with just startups. So, and these startups are constantly looking for interns, and they don't really care if you're a master's, you're a bachelor's, first year, second year. They just want someone skilled who will do the work for them. So
Okay.
that is how I got my internship. I actually, believe it or not, applied through LinkedIn. I had been just applying everywhere on LinkedIn, and I stumbled upon my current one, which is Whire. And I took the 4 interviews, and it's a slow process. You have to be really patient, but you will get something. And when it comes to, I would say this is more for the masters and for the ones who are graduating their bachelors. When you want to go for big companies, my tip would be start looking early.
Yeah.
If you can find a connect with them, do it. Networking is a little issue with COVID now, but I feel that if you really put yourself out there, you will find it.
Right.
And they just prefer you being super like done with your degree and on the verge of just springing into the workforce. So I think it's better if the masters and the penultimate students, as they call it, go for those.
All right, perfect. So I believe we covered all the important aspects of an Indian student in Singapore or probably abroad. We covered about the application process, the colleges, country, life experience, accommodation. Thanks to you, we also covered the topics related to food and jobs. Couple of final questions, small questions. Given today, if somebody asks you, because most of the Indian students, they still prefer to study in the US, right? US is still the number one choice of destination for Indian students. So what advantage, Singapore is a very small country, it's a very vibrant, very dynamic, very progressive country, but it's a small country compared to most of the countries in the West. So in your opinion, what advantages Singapore has over other European countries or Western countries if somebody has to make a decision today?
Well, for Indian students, I would like to start off by saying that, okay, maybe not in the US, but as compared to Europe, Indian students will find it better to fit in Singapore.
Right.
Like it's they find it easier
Right.
because the locals, most there is a certain percentage of locals which are ethnically Indian, so you can already the community accepts you. In Europe, I'm not saying the community doesn't accept you, but it's still you really need to play it their way. You really need to have the language,
Right.
and you really need to get used to their way of living. Over here, being Singapore being a melting pot of so many cultures, not just Asian but also Western cultures, it's a very globalized scene over here, so you really fit in very easily. So, and that's people may think that, I don't need to fit in, I can do whatever I want, but there are times, especially when you're looking for jobs, that you really need that you need to have a connect with the place.
Absolutely.
Then compared to the US, like I would say that politically and economically speaking, the fluctuations you see in the US and in the European economies, etc., it's much lesser here. I think the stability in Singapore is more.
Yeah.
And one more fun fact for the people who are focusing on the jobs: the tax percentage in Singapore is only 15%.
Wow.
So you earn much more over here than you would in Europe or the US. So that's a little secret that I let you guys in on. And most people don't realize that, but eventually, if you want to work here, that is a major factor, like how much tax you're going to pay.
It is.
And then we should also consider the fact that it's so close to India,
Yeah.
and you can go back home anytime. And also, like being in, like you're in the same time zone, so those personal matters are also not as important, but they do play a big role.
Right.
So, and then again, if you ever feel homesick, you always have like places over here that you can go and have Indian food, or the Indian community over here is pretty strong. So you have all the festivals, etc. So in the West also you can have that, but it's not as local as it is. And I think finally, over here in jobs, especially, people from other countries are eased in much faster, considering it's a melting pot and so much diversity. If you start working in an American or a European firm, your easing in is a little can be a bit bumpy in the beginning,
Right.
considering you're coming from India, right from India, and for especially people who have never been outside before or never been in that kind of situations before, it can get bumpy for them. Over here, I think it will be much easier.
Okay. All right. Um, I think that sums up everything. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for all the important information that you shared and all the important tips as well. Just one final suggestion from you for all the viewers who are watching this today, and they might be interested in studying in Singapore or probably studying anywhere across the globe. As a young Indian Bright ambassador of India abroad, what suggestions do you have to share with Indian students who might be considering to study abroad this year or next year?
Well, first of all, I would just like to address the fact that even if it's COVID, don't worry. You can still go. So don't get disheartened or don't get frightened that, oh, I cannot leave. Worldwide situation is so bad. It's getting better and it will get better. So don't get frustrated with that. I know I have been there. It can be very sad to have online classes and have all your friends in another country, but you will eventually fly out. So don't worry, that's going to happen. And I would also suggest that a lot of people who are at the moment considering should I go out for my bachelor's or not, trust me, it's worth it. Like even in India, you go and there are experiences that you just cannot get if
Right.
you stay there. So you can always come back and work there after studying here, but this is you don't only learn like better, you don't only get knowledge, but you also learn so many life skills that are so important for you. So if you're considering should I go or should I not, my suggestion is go for it if you can. If it's possible for you, 100% go for it. And then finally, I would just like to say, because everyone's so concerned with jobs, I know it's COVID. I know many people are getting even laid off their jobs, but again, there are always chances, and you feel that I can't do anything, but then some chance will come up and you just have to take it. So I hope
Absolutely.
that helps.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. In fact, I was mesmerized by what you were saying. Not just for audience, but also for me, it's a revelation, and I'm so thankful to you on behalf of all the viewers and all the people who would be interested in going abroad, and myself. I'm very thankful to you. Every time I talk to you, Vanessa, I don't feel like I'm talking to a 19-year-old, a BBA first year student. I feel as if I'm talking to a PhD student. So thank you for all the life lessons. So thank you so much once again. We wish you lots of health and success ahead. And for all the viewers who are watching this right now, Vanessa is a student at international BBA program at ESSEC Business School. ESSEC Business School is one of the finest business schools in the world. It's probably the second best business school in France, which has its campuses in Singapore as well. She is right now studying a BBA program, which is ranked number one in France and one of the finest in Singapore as well. Not just Singapore, but all across the globe. She applied last year, and right now she is in her first year doing an internship. If you want to get in touch with Vanessa, we will drop her LinkedIn URL in the comments section, so you can just talk to her. And if you have any queries related to studying abroad, especially in Singapore, or any kind of queries which comes to your mind when you want to study abroad or plan to study abroad, feel free to drop in comment section. So thank you so much, Vanessa, and
Thank
thank
you
you
for
so much,
having me.
everyone. Take good care. We catch up again. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.